अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाज़रीन, प्रोग्राम अनसेंसर्ड विद फयाज नाइच सगत मां जो मेज़बान फयाज नाइच नाज़रीन गुफ्तगू कंदासूं हिन वक्त अमेरिका जे चूंडनि जे हवाले सां आवाज़ टीवी जी टीम अमेरिका जे चूंडनि जी कवरेज लाइ ख़ुसूसी तौर ते अमेरिका में मौजूद आहे ऐं मुख़्तलिफ़ जेका इलाइक़ा आहिनि उन्हनि जे अंदरि तव्हां ॾिठो त जेके ॿिन्ही पार्टियुनि जा नेशनल कन्वेंशन थिया उते बि तव्हांखे लम्हा ब लम्हा अपडेट कंदा रहियासीं आवाज़ टीवी जी स्क्रीन ते। अॼोके प्रोग्राम में गुफ्तगू कंदासूं अमेरिका जे अंदरि ग़रीब माण्हुनि जो, छाकाणि त आम तसवर इहो आहे त अमेरिका मतिलबु आहे त अमीर माण्हुनि जो मुल्क आहे, पर अमेरिका जे अंदरि बि तमामु घणा ग़रीब माण्हू रहनि था। अंगनि अखरनि मुताबिक़ अमेरिका जी जेका टोटल आबादी आहे उन जो तक़रीबन 35% माण्हू जेके आहिनि उहे गुरबत जी ज़िंदगी गुज़ारनि था या जिन खे लो इनकम पॉपुलेशन चयो वञे थो पियो। उन में 85 लख जेके आहिनि उन्हीं जा एलिजिबल वोट 85 मिलियन यानी 8 करोड़ 50 लख जेके आहिनि पंहिंजो माण्हू जेके आहिनि उहे वोटर आहिनि जेके गुरबत जे दायरे में अचनि था या जिन खे लो इनकम वोटर चयो वञे थो पियो। अमेरिका जे अंदरि जेका गुरबत आहे उनमें 140 मिलियन पीपल यानी 14 करोड़ माण्हू लॻभॻि जेके आहिनि उहो चयो पियो वञे उहो गुरबत जी ज़िंदगी गुज़ारनि था या लो इनकम जेके आहिनि उहा पॉपुलेशन आहे। पर इंतहाई हैरत जहिड़ी ॻाल्हि आहे, आम तरह इहो तसवुरु कयो वेंदो आहे जेकॾहिं अमेरिका में को ग़रीब हूंदो त उहो को कारो हूंदो, को एशियन हूंदो, को अफ्रीकन हूंदो, पर आम तौर ते इहो तसवुरु आहे त अमेरिका जा गोरा जेके आहिनि उहे बिल्कुलु अमीर आहिनि। पर हिन गुरबत वारे अंगनि अखरनि में जेको आहे ॿुधायो वियो आहे त जेके वाइट आहिनि गोरा जेके आहिनि अमरीकी उहे 66 मिलियन आहिनि, 140 मां 66 मिलियन यानी 6 करोड़ 60 लख जेके आहिनि माण्हू जेके आहिनि उहे गोरा अमरीकी उहे गुरबत जी ज़िंदगी गुज़ारनि था या लो इनकम जेके पॉपुलेशन जे दायरे में अचनि था। जॾहिं त हिस्पैनिक या लैटिनोस जेके आहिनि उहे बि गोरा आहिनि, पर उहे जीअं त उन्हनि जी लैंग्वेज बि आहे उहे यूरोप खां आया आहिनि, उन्हनि जो जेको आहे अंग जेको आहे उहो 38 मिलियन यानी 3 करोड़ 80 लख आहे। जॾहिं त ब्लैक पॉपुलेशन या अफ्रीकन अमेरिकन जिन खे चयो वञे थो उहे कुल जेके आहिनि 26 मिलियन यानी 2 करोड़ 60 लख आहिनि। ईअं एशियन जेके आहिनि जंहिंमें असांजो मुल्क बि अची थो वञे, हिंदुस्तान ऐं चाइना जापान इन तरह जा जेके साउथ एशिया ईस्ट एशिया जा माण्हू जेके आहिनि उन्हनि जो तादाद जेको आहे उहो 80 लख आहे जेके गुरबत वारी दायरे में अचनि था या लो इनकम वेजिस में अचनि था। इहे अंग अखर ॿुधाइनि था त अमेरिका में जेका गुरबत आहे उहा तमामु अहम आहे, पर अमेरिका जे जेका इलेक्शन आहे उनमें ग़रीबनि जी ॻाल्हि, ग़रीबनि जे बारे में जेका गुफ़्तगू आहे उहा हिन भेरे कम अज़ कम न थियण जे बराबरि थी आहे, छाकाणि त जेका प्रेसिडेंशियल डिबेट थी कैमला हैरिस ऐं फॉर्मर प्रेसिडेंट बाइडेन जे विच में उनमें हिकु दफ़ो बि पॉवर्टी या यानी गुरबत या पुअर पीपल या ग़रीब माण्हू जो लफ़्ज़ बि इस्तेमालु कोन कयो वियो, सॼो फोकस मिडिल क्लासिस ते रहियो। अॼोके प्रोग्राम में गुफ़्तगू कंदासूं इन्हनि अंगनि अखरनि ते ऐं उनखां अलावा इन वोटर ब्लॉक जो इम्पैक्ट छा आहे उन ते हवाले सां गुफ़्तगू कंदासूं। असांखे बॉस्टन ग्लोब जी सीनियर जर्नलिस्ट केटी जॉन्स्टन ज्वाइन कंदी ऐं केटी जॉन्स्टन खे खां पुछंदासूं हिन सॼे मसइले जे बारे में। Well, Katie, thank you very much for joining our show. I would like to ask about the impact of the poor people who are considered as low-income people. What do you think? What they have impact on the elections, especially the presidential elections?
Well, they tend to vote in lower numbers than higher income people, and so politicians often don't reach out to them. But the Poor People's Campaign, who is trying to mobilize low-income voters, counts 140 million Americans who live in households with incomes under $50,000 a year. And so they consider those people low income. And they say that if they can mobilize more, even 10 or 20% of those voters, especially in swing states, these voters tend to vote Democratic. And if they turn out to vote in higher numbers, even 10 or 20% higher than normal, they could have a huge impact on the election.
Do you think, because as you may have mentioned that Poor People Campaign, they have claimed that in 2020, they were successful to mobilize a good number of the poor or low income people. That's why they claim that because of their campaign, it was those results came that Biden won from the Trump. Do you think is this claim right?
I have no idea. Their data, they do have a lot of extensive data. They work with several market research firms and polling firms. And so they do have a lot of real data. And they do say that they mobilized 6 million more. Well, they say 6 million more low-income people voted in 2020 than in 2016. And I don't think they claim credit for all of those people because, you know, it was the pandemic. Trump was running again, and so there was a lot of energy from people who were seeking change, but they certainly could have been a part of it.
Okay, well, Katie, if we talk about the numbers, as you have mentioned, there's 140 million people of the America who are considered as low income or poor people. But as we consider about the voters, that is the statistic is 85 billion are eligible registered voters who are considered as low income or low wage voters. But as these statistics show us that majority of the low income people or low income voters is more than half of this number is white Americans. Usually we consider that poverty means the black people or the people of the color. But these numbers show that more than half, as the population of the US is more than half is based on white, so is the poor people are also more than half of these numbers. Do you think this is a Trump constituency so that half of the people do not have any care of their issues and they are in love with the Trump?
Well, first of all, on the numbers, the federal statistic on poverty is much lower. Like you said, it's close to 40 million. But that is a household that makes a household of four only making $28,000 or less. These campaigns are looking at a little bit higher number of households under 50,000, which is still very low in the United States. And if you count those numbers, there's 140 million people. So a much bigger number, which is a lot of the reason they say they've been discounted is because they're just counting this extreme poverty level. But yes, the majority, by numbers, the majority of these low-income people in the United States are white. And that has led to, and some of them, you know, Trump has attracted some working class white voters in particular, mainly evangelicals. And some people say that because poverty is often portrayed as a black issue, that people pay less attention to it because they see it as this, you know, if it only affects one group of people, it could be their fault, right? Whereas if it's everybody, if white people, black people, brown people, Asian people, if poverty affects everybody, it's a systemic issue, right? There's something wrong with the economy. Our minimum wage is only $7.25. It hasn't been raised in 15 years, right? So what these campaigns to attract these voters are trying to say, this is everybody's problem. It's not just a black problem.
Yes, but it is considered that Trump has its constituency of the white Americans, and the people of color are tilted or tend to be considered as Democrats voters. Do you think that, yes?
I was just going to say, I have some stats here. That in 2020, Donald Trump got 59% of the white working class vote. And this working class vote is people without college degrees is how they define it. And he attracts much more of those people than people with college degrees. White people with college degrees tend to vote Democratic. But he didn't get he got 59% of this white working class vote. So that there's a lot of room for people, especially in these battleground states, if more people voted, because low-income voters tend to vote Democratic, that would increase the odds of Harris winning.
If we compare about the policies, we have witnessed the 4 years of the Trump administration, then we have witnessed the 4 years of Kamala and Biden administration. As far as policies are concerned, do you think there was a specific focus of any of these two administrations on the issues of the low income or the poor people?
I mean, that's not something I'm super well versed in, but that's the Democrats and Biden tend to focus more on low income voters for sure, and the issues that they, I mean, like Biden and Harris, for instance, support the $15 minimum wage, whereas Trump and Vance do not.
This is the only one issue you think that is, otherwise the healthcare issues and the other such issues, policy issues that also have direct relationship with the poor people. Don't you consider?
I mean, like I said, I'm not a policy expert, but the low income issues do not, Democrats tend to address them much more than Republicans do.
Okay, if we consider this election, as we have, everyone is talking that this election, and mostly all elections of the United States are not about the 50 states. Actually, everyone has to focus on the last moment on swing states. This time, 7 states are considered as swing states. Do you think any difference in those elections with this campaign of the poor people?
Right. Those are the states that they show that if even 10 to 20% of the low income people turn out to vote, more of those people turn out to vote in those 7 swing states, they would all go for Harris. And that would be the outcome of the election.
There is no impact because, as the campaign says, that there was no mention in the debate, even from the Kamala Harris. She was also focused on the middle classes. She talked about the middle classes. She even didn't mention the poverty or the poor people or low income or low wages. So, do you think there is a resentment in this block of the voters that she even do not consider them to mention their issues?
Yes, they're definitely ignored by both parties. You know, I think Pete Buttigieg even said that the reason we don't talk about poverty is that consultants tell us not to. That was in William Barber's book. He's the co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, who's mobilizing low-income voters. And so both parties, Democrats and Republicans alike, ignore poverty, partly because they vote in such low numbers and they're not considered to be, you know, a bloc that reliable turns out. But it's also because poverty has been marginalized as a Black issue. That affects a much lower number of people in the United States than is true. You know, the official federal level is less than 40 million, whereas if you look at households making up to $50,000, which is still really low, it affects 140 million, according to the Poor People's Campaign data. So they do tend to get ignored because people think, it's a much smaller group that doesn't care about issue or doesn't show up, right? But when you go out and talk to these people, as you and I have both done, you can see that they are very knowledgeable, they do care, but there are often obstacles for them voting, right? One of them being some of them work 2 or 3 jobs and don't have time to get to the polls, or they don't have transportation to get to the polls. They also feel like politicians don't address poverty, which they don't, right? So it's kind of this vicious circle, right? Like they don't vote because they think politicians don't care, and politicians don't care about them because they don't vote. So it's something that needs to be broken.
Do you think these campaigns have somehow an impact to change the mindset of the poor people who don't want to vote for the presidency or for any election? Do you think there is an impact because this campaign has started in 2017 and now we are in 24? So is there any impact, do you see as a reporter, that has significant impact?
Well, it remains to be seen. I mean, they say they helped attract 6 million more people in the 2020 election. And this year, I think they said they reached out to about 7 million people in that election year in 2020. And this year, they said by November 5th, they'll have reached out to 15 million people, which is double that. So I think by, engaging people, talking to them, they hand out these fact sheets showing them how Democrats, Republicans vote, give them voter information. I think by showing a little effort and showing lower income people that their vote matters and that they should be engaged in the democratic process could definitely spur more people to vote. It remains to be seen if they do and how many and what impact that has. But if they do turn up in larger numbers, they definitely could have an impact, and it's likely that it would have a positive impact for Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party.
Well, in this campaign, we have a lot of other issues which have impact on the campaigns. For example, the Middle East crisis, then the cases of the Donald Trump, 2 times he was shot. So that those issues, and then the debate issues and the other issues. So do you think this issue of the poor people has been overshadowed by other issues and is neglected?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you very much, Katie Johnston, for joining us for this show. And I hope till the election, we will be, and our viewers will be happy to connect you and your for your views to know about the American politics. Thank you very much. जी नाज़रीन, गुफ्तगू तां ॿुधी केटी जॉन्स्टन बॉस्टन ग्लोब जी करस्पॉन्डेंट सीनियर करस्पॉन्डेंट आहे। उन सां तव्हां गुफ्तगू ॿुधी अमेरिका जे अंदरि जेको इहो ग़रीब माण्हुनि जो लो इनकम वोटर्स जेके आहिनि उन जे बारे में तव्हांखे इंट्रो में ॿुधायोसीं। पर इहो मसइलो इहो आहे त जीअं केटी जॉन्स्टन ॿुधायो पिए त इहे जेके माण्हू आहिनि उन जो वोट जो रेशियो जेको आहे उहो उन्हनि जी पॉपुलेशन जे हवाले सां जी निस्बत में घटि आहे, छाकाणि त इहे माण्हू वोट इन करे नथा ॾियनि छाकाणि त उहे सम्झनि था त वोट जेको आहे उन्हनि जी का इम्पोर्टेंस न आहे ऐं सियासतदान उन्हनि जे वोट खे इम्पोर्टेंस नथा ॾियनि। ॿी वजह इहा आहे त इहे जेके लो इनकम माण्हू आहिनि इहे ॿ टे जॉब्स कनि था पिया, तंहिंजे लाइ इहे वोट वारे ॾींहुं मोकल करे वोट ॾियणु वञनि ऐं उहो उन्हनि लाइ वॾो मसइलो थिए थो। टियों त ज़ाहिर आहे वोट ॾियणु वञनि त उनजे लाइ उन्हनि खे का टैक्सी करणी पइजी वञे या का पोलिंग स्टेशन ते वञण लाइ को ट्रांसपोर्ट खपे, छाकाणि हिते त ट्रांसपोर्ट उम्मीदवार कोन ॾींदा आहिनि। तंहिं करे उहे वोटर उहे $15, $20, $25 उन उते वञण लाइ ऐं वापसि अचण लाइ $15-20 ॿिया जेके ख़र्च कनि, यानी उहो बि हुननि लाइ वॾो मसइलो आहे। त उहे सम्झनि था त इहो असां $25-30 ख़र्च जो कयूं, उनखां अलावा पंहिंजी जॉब तां ऑफ कयूं, माना उहे बि हुननि जा कलाक वञनि। तंहिं करे उहे सम्झनि था त इहो घाटे जो सौदो आहे। पर अमेरिका जे अंदरि ॿिन्ही पार्टियुनि वटि, मां कंहिं वटि बि हेल ताईं इन वोटर्स खे जेको आहे पोलिंग स्टेशन ते आणण लाइ का रिथाबंदी न आहे। तोड़े जो कैंपेन्स हलनि थियूं, जीअं पुअर पीपल कैंपेन जे नाले सां हिकिड़ी कैंपेन 2017 खां वठी हले थी पई ऐं उहे क्लेम कनि था पिया त 2020 जे चूंडुनि में उन्हनि जी कैंपेन जे नतीजे में जेको आहे बाइडन खटियो हुयो, छाकाणि त उन्हनि 60 लख वधीक वोटर जेके आहिनि उहे मोबिलाइज़ कया हुया, ख़ासि तरह स्विंग स्टेट्स जे अंदरि। हिन वक़्तु बि 7 जेके स्विंग स्टेट्स आहिनि जंहिंमें मिशिगन, पेंसिल्वेनिया ऐं उनखां अलावा विस्कॉन्सन, नेवाडा, एरिज़ोना, जॉर्जिया ऐं नॉर्थ कैरोलिना, इहे 7 स्विंग स्टेट्स आहिनि। उते तमामु घणी जेका आहे वठ पकड़ लॻी पई आहे ऐं उते जेका आहे ॿिन्ही पार्टियुनि जो ज़ोर आहे। पर हेल ताईं उते बि कैंपेनिंग जेका हले थी पई उनमें ग़रीब माण्हुनि खे अट्रैक्ट करण लाइ पार्टियुनि जे पारां का डायरेक्ट जेका आहे असांखे एफर्ट नज़र नथी अचे। पर ही मुख़्तलिफ़ जेके ऑर्गेनाइज़ेशन्स आहिनि पुअर पीपल कैंपेन जे नाले सां ऐं ॿियूं उहे कोशिश कनि पियूं त इहे जेको आहे इन्हनि माण्हुनि खे वोट पोलिंग स्टेशन ते वठी अचे, छाकाणि त हुनजो ख़्यालु इहो आहे त इहो ई बेसिकली उहो माण्हू आहे जेको अमेरिका जे हुकूमतुनि जे पॉलिसी जो सभ खां वॾो विक्टिम थिए थो। तंहिं करे उहो माण्हू जॾहिं ईंदो वोट ॾियणु ऐं उहो मैटर कंदो त अमेरिका जी हुकूमतूं बि पंहिंजी पॉलिसी में उनखे कंसीडर कंदियूं। वक़फ़ो वठो था, वक़्फ़े खां पोइ मोटी अची अमेरिकन इलेक्शन जो हिकिड़ो ॿियो जेको पासो आहे उहो आहे जेके इथनिक बुनियादनि ते, रेशियल बुनियादनि ते, यानी ब्लैक वोटर्स, पंहिंजो वाइट वोटर, हिस्पैनिक या लैटिनो वोटर्स, उन्हनि जो जेका सूरत हाल आहे, डेमोग्राफिक जेका उन जी सूरत हाल आहे ऐं उन्हनि जी टिल्ट कहिड़े पासे आहे ऐं उन्हनि जे अंदरि कहिड़ी पार्टी वधीक पॉपुलर थींदी पई वञे, उन ते गुफ़्तगू कंदासूं। असां सां गॾु रहिजो। welcome back नाज़रीन अचल प्रोग्राम जे सिलसिले खे अॻिते वधायूं गुफ़्तगू कंदासूं अमरीकी चूंडनि जे हवाले सां हिन वक़्तु असां गुफ़्तगू कंदासूं त अमरीका जे अंदरि जेके मुख़्तलिफ़ ग्रुप रहनि था मुख़्तलिफ़ नस्लनि जा ग्रुप रहनि था जीअं मिसाल तौर अमरीका जी आबादी ते जेकॾहिं नज़र विझे त उनजो लॻभॻि 98 खां 60% जेके आहिनि उहो गोरा माण्हुनि ते मुश्तमिल उनजी आबादी आहे जॾहिं त पाण जेकॾहिं लेटिनोज़ या जेके आहिनि हिस्पैनिक आबादी जेका आहे उहा लॻभॻि 19% आहे ऐं ईअं 14% खां मथे अफ्रीकन अमेरिकन या ब्लैक पॉपुलेशन जंहिंखे चयो वञे थो उन ते मुश्तमिल आहे ये जेके मुख़्तलिफ़ ग्रुप्स आहिनि उनमें कहिड़ी पार्टी जी कहिड़ी सूरत हाल आहे ऐं विद द पैसेज ऑफ टाइम वक़्तु गुज़रण सां उहा किथे बीठी आहे मक़बूलियत ॿिन्ही पार्टियुनि जी इन्हनि मुख़्तलिफ़ ग्रुप्स जे अंदरि उन ते गुफ़्तगू कंदासूं न्यूयॉर्क टाइम्स जी सीनियर करस्पॉन्डेंट माया किंग असांखे जॉइन कयो आहे जेका जॉर्जिया स्टेट जे एटलांटा शहर में रहे थी पई ऐं उहो जेका आहे वन ऑफ द स्विंग स्टेट्स आहे जॉर्जिया बि ऐं उनजो काफ़ी कमु थियल आहे ख़ासि तरह ब्लैक ऐं ॿिया कलर्स वोटर्स जे हवाले सां माया किंग जो तमामु घणो कमु थियल आहे माया थैंक यू वेरी मच एंड वेलकम टू द शो
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much, Maya. This is really a very close election we are witnessing nowadays, which are a few weeks away from now. What do you see? I have gone through your story that the Democratic Party is losing its popularity in the black voters. What are the reasons and what are the statistics? Will you please share with our audience?
Well, Black voters historically have supported Democrats overwhelmingly. President Biden in 2020 won close to 90% of the vote from Black voters, and they have long supported Democrats in really large numbers. The polling that we at the New York Times have done of Black voters shows that some of the support that they have for Harris is actually dropping. So rather than upwards of 90%, she sits at the low 80% with most Black voters, which is still a very impressive showing and overwhelming support. It's just not as close to President Biden as it was in 2020. Some of the reasons that they've cited in conversations with us have been frustration with the Democratic Party, feeling like it campaigns in Black communities and talks directly to Black voters every 4 years, but then fails to deliver on any of its policy promises. And some Black voters have also shown an openness to supporting President Trump, saying that they feel like he would be a better choice on the economy and that he would be a stronger leader on the global stage.
Do you think that if we compare both the presidencies, Trump presidency and Biden presidency, was there anything happened or a policy shift by the Trump or the Biden that has created this kind of perception in the Black voters?
I think it's a perception that exists among most voters right now, that the economy is not quite where they want it to be. And the Trump campaign has pushed a message that many communities, including Black communities, were better off under President Trump 4 years ago than they are now. That's not entirely the truth, but it's something that I think has taken hold in the minds of some Black voters. President Trump, as president, the one policy that he passed for Black voters specifically was the First Step Act, which was a series of incremental criminal justice reforms. But President Biden and Vice President Harris have touted many other policies, like lowering healthcare costs for diabetics. A disproportionate number of Black Americans do have diabetes, giving more funding to historically Black colleges and universities as well. And also, Harris has put forth a policy proposal geared specifically towards Black men that pushes for funding for historically for small businesses and also for bolstering many of the programs that promote mentorship of young Black men who are early in their careers.
Then why this policy, pro-Black policy of the Democratic Party is not working?
I think because many Black voters feel like this is what Democrats do every 4 years around campaigns, that they make these promises to them but don't always follow through. So there's a little bit of distrust there, and also just general fatigue and apathy.
If we focus on the swing states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, North Carolina, What do you think? What is the situation in these states? Because you are also in Georgia, and it is one of the states where we have percentage-wise very huge black population. 32%, more than 32% of the Georgia comprises on the black voters. How do you see the statistics and your analysis about the swing states?
Well, Democrats and Republicans are campaigning throughout these different swing states, and they're going to specific pockets. So in Georgia, Democrats are hoping to boost turnout among Democrats in the metro Atlanta area, the capital city. That has a lot of Democratic voters. But they also are spending more time in the rural areas in southern Georgia and northern Georgia, where there are some conservatives. And I think that's also something that Republicans and former President Trump are doing. They're trying to go into, one, the places where they know their voters are, the parts of these states that are historically voting Democrat or Republican. But in the last few weeks, we've also seen President Trump go into historically Democratic territory and Vice President Harris go into historically Republican territory. They're hoping to not only get their voters out, but also change the minds of those folks who have said that they are open to supporting the opposite party.
Why the black roots of the Kamala Harris is not working as it has worked we have witnessed in 2008 and 2012 when Obama was the president. The black voters came out for the voting immensely.
Well, the argument for representation, simply voting for someone because they look like you, is not something that Black voters have always supported. They tend to support Democrats because they feel like the policies because they feel like the policies of the Democratic Party do more for their communities. It certainly was an added bonus to have someone like President Obama atop the ticket who would make history and did make history as the first Black president. So certainly there were many Black voters who felt like that was very special to them. But I think now under Harris, the situation economically for many people is very dire. Their lives have changed quite dramatically since the COVID-19 pandemic, especially. And so, it is certainly an added bonus for some people to have a Black woman atop the ticket. But people that I've spoken to, Democrats who are supporting her, say, yes, it's exciting, but we want her to be a president for all people.
Yes, but if we see the other way, Trump is supported by which is called that white supremacist or the white racist and we have witnessed the George Floyd case and other hatred kind of incidents throughout. And during his presidency, even he has encouraged supported that supremacy mindset. Don't you think that the Black voters or the Latino voters feel that Trump is actually not a guy who should be the president for all people?
Some do believe that, absolutely. And I think that's why Harris still has upwards of 80% of Black support, because still an overwhelming majority of people of color do not really agree with a lot of what President Trump is saying. However, I also have heard from some people who say that they are ignoring the former president's racism, that they feel like even though he says things that are offensive and that may offend people in their communities, he is a businessman and someone who will deliver economically for them, regardless of their skin color.
Maya, thank you very much for joining us. I hope before until election, we will be able to connect you again so that our viewers can have your candid and thought-provoking and well-informed views. Thank you very much for joining us. नाज़रीन, माया किन की गुफ्तगू तामुदी अमेरिका जे अंदर ब्लैक वोटर्स जे विच में डेमोक्रेटिक पार्टी जी मक़बूलियत घटिजे पई और छो पई घटिजे उनमें डोनाल्ड ट्रंप जी मक़बूलियत जेका वधे पई उहा छो पई वधे उनजा जेके मुख़्तलिफ़ सबब आहिनि उनजो हिकिड़ो मुख्य सबब इहा त डेमोक्रेटिक पार्टी जॾहिं इलेक्शन में ईंदी आहे जेके वादा कंदी आहे पोइ जॾहिं हुकूमत में अचण खां पोइ उन्हनि वाइदनि जो तमामु घटि सैकड़ो जेको आहे उन ते अमल कंदी आहे। ॿिए तरफ़ माण्हू इहो सम्झनि था त हिन वक़्तु मईशत जेका आहे अमेरिका जी ख़राबु आहे, तंहिं करे हिकिड़ो स्ट्रॉन्ग लीडर खपे जेको मईशत खे सहारो ॾिए। उन हवाले सां डोनाल्ड ट्रंप ते माण्हू वधीक जेको आहे यकीन रखनि था। इहे व्यूज़ हुया माया किंग जा। इन सां गॾु नाज़रीन प्रोग्राम जो वक़्तु पूरो थिए थो। अमेरिका मां अमरीकी सदारती चूंडनि जे हवाले सां आवाज़ टीवी जी टीम मुख़्तलिफ़ वक़्तनि ते तव्हांखे अपडेट कंदी रहंदी, न सिर्फ़ु तंहिंजे पंहिंजो अवाम सां ऐं वोट जा अंदरि जेके सर्वे थियनि था, जेके रिपोर्टिंग आहे उहा, पर उन सां गॾु जेके हिते वेल इंफॉर्म तमाम जेके जर्नलिस्ट आहिनि उन्हनि जा व्यू पॉइंट ऐं उन्हनि जा थॉट प्रोवोकिंग जेके व्यूज़ आहिनि उहे बि तव्हां ताईं पहुचाईंदी आहे। जो कि प्रोग्राम में पंहिंजे मेज़बान फयाज़ नाइच, असांजी मेहमान माया किंग खे ॾींदा इजाज़त। सदाईं खे